Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Makoi Popioco para sa Typhoon Rolly special coverage ng Fight Media. Ang Typhoon Rolly ang sinasabing pinakamalakas na bagyo ngayong taon na tatama sa bansa simula bukas hanggang Lunes sa gitna ng isang pandemya. And Typhoon Rolly is also the most powerful typhoon to hit the Philippines since Super Typhoon Yolanda, with international name Haiyan, that killed more than 6,000 people in November 2013. Konting update lang from Pag-asa, Typhoon Rolly slightly slowed down Saturday afternoon while moving toward Bicol. Today, the government ordered at least 200,000 people to evacuate as the typhoon approaches. Authorities warned of destructive winds and storm surges. Natuto na ba tayo sa mga aral ng nakaraang Super Typhoon? Makakausap natin ngayong gabi si Undersecretary Ricardo Jalad, ang Executive Director ng National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. Magandang gabi, Yusek Jalad.
Magandang gabi, Makoy. Magandang gabi sa ating mga kababayan na nakikinig ngayon, sumusubaybay sa iyong programa.
Sir, I understand that you just stepped out of a meeting. Any updates, sir, mula sa meeting na yan na kailangan natin i-anunsyo sa publiko?
Yeah, doon sa meeting na yon, nabigyan tayo ng update ng Pag-asa at saka on their weather forecast on Typhoon Tisoy at saka dito kay Depression Astani na sumusunod. And ganun din, binigyan din tayo ng assessment ng Mines and Geoscience Bureau ng DNR or NDRRMC on areas that have high and very high susceptibility to flooding and landslides. And based on this presentation, ito nga sinasabi ng Pag-asa that Typhoon Rolly is likely to remain a typhoon at with a wind speed of from 185 to 205. It is assuming siguro na as it approaches the landmass of the Philippines, it will slightly decrease in wind speed. It is now at 215 kilometers per hour. Hopefully, it's not going to intensify further. And as expected, once it hits the landmass, it will weaken considerably. And the center of the eye of Typhoon Rolly is forecast to pass very close to Catanduanes and Calaguas Island of Camarines Norte and Camarines provinces. It will also be passing over Polillo Islands and mainland Quezon tomorrow, and then proceeds to Metro Manila. So Metro Manila is part of that track as presented by Pag-asa. And based on the assessment of heavy rains to intense rains is expected over the Bicol region, Calabarzon, Metro Manila, Central Luzon, Marinduque, and northern portions of Mindoro provinces, beginning tomorrow early morning. And there is already that risk of storm surge in some areas, particularly storm surge about 3 to 5 meters in the northern coastal areas of Quezon, including Polillo Islands. And from the MJB, we were told about 8,163 barangays are susceptible to landslides and flood. And these are from various regions: Bicol region, Cagayan Valley, Calabarzon, Caraga, even Caraga, Central Luzon, Cordillera Administrative Region, Ilocos Region, Metro Manila, Mimaropa, Northern Mindanao, and Western Visayas. This is based on the rainfall forecast given by Pag-asa due to Typhoon Rolly.
All right. Yusek, pag-usapan natin yung preemptive evacuation. As I mentioned earlier, at least 200,000 people have already been evacuated. Sir, any update on the figures?
Well, actually, from Region 5 alone, it's now close to 1 million evacuated. And if you add the other preemptive evacuations being undertaken by Calabarzon, which is not yet reported to us. So by this time, we have maybe about more than 1 million evacuations. So it is yung Bicol region ang quick to react to the order of the ILG to conduct preemptive evacuation based on the operations list of protocol of the ILG. And it is because also the Bicol region is the first to be hit or directly by Typhoon Rolly. So
Yes.
if all the other regions will be complying, we might be moving almost 2 million people.
2 million. Sir, in the process of enforcing this preemptive evacuation, did you face any challenges?
Well, of course, the local government units, may mga challenges yan in the transportation of evacuees because we have to comply with health protocols being imposed now because of the COVID pandemic. So yung ating mga sasakyan, hindi po pwedeng punuin. And so that's why we advocate the early implementation of preemptive evacuation because we understand it will take a long time. And likewise, in the management of evacuation centers, we also have to make sure that there is proper distancing and that the people there are still observing the health practices like wearing of masks, frequent washing of hands, and therefore dapat available dyan sa mga evacuation centers yung water and soap na magagamit.
Right.
So maraming challenges, but then before the advent of rainy season, we have already issued directive to the local government units to prepare for this for the rainy season and typhoon season.
Mm-hmm. So, sir, you mentioned about social distancing measures within the evacuation centers, and with my experience documenting the aftermath of typhoons, kadalasan siksikan sa mga evacuation center. How do we enforce these protocols?
So, management of evacuation centers is a responsibility of the local government units, augmented by the concerned national government agencies like on food and best practices on how to manage the evacuation centers by DILG, on hygiene, sanitation, and health by the OH, and for overall coordination by the Office of Civil Defense. So, mas malaking challenge ngayon dahil sa pandemic. Well, yeah. We have no choice. We have to remove people out of people's harm's way. And the local government units really have to identify facilities that can be used as evacuation centers. And one of that, of course, is the schools, because classes now are suspended. Use of the classrooms are free to be used as evacuation centers. Our classes are online.
Mm-hmm. Sir, you mentioned that it's the local government that formulated the protocols for social distancing, but did the national government come up with some guidelines that these LGUs will follow? Did you do that?
Yes, we did. We issued the guidelines several months back, anticipating the coming rain season, and that we will still have the pandemic.
Yes, but before Rolly, a week ago, we had Typhoon Quinta with the preemptive evacuations that had been ordered because of that typhoon. Ano po yung mga challenges related to that na nakita ninyo when it comes to the enforcement of the preemptive evacuation? Meron po bang problema na na-report doon sa mga evacuation center?
Wala naman. In fact, the report or the pictures shown to us of evacuation centers ay nandun yung nakikita natin yung enforcement of the protocols, proper protocols in the evacuation centers aligned with the protocols for COVID-19. So wala naman problema na report sa atin. So we have, but isa yan sa adaptation natin with the COVID virus. And isang matinding challenge is that after Typhoon Rolly comes itong si Shoni, ano? And we are prepared really to for an extended period of the management of evacuation centers by the local government units to be augmented by national government agencies. So yung logistics and personal movement ay isa sa augmentation na gagawin ng mga national government agencies.
Okay.
But what we are telling them also, the local government units, is to have maximum use of their resources, supplies as well as responders, because extended na yung mga stretched na tayo because of the pandemic. So maximum use of respective resources ang kinakailangan.
Yeah, and speaking of funds, sir, I understand that some of the calamity funds ng ilang mga LGU depleted na because of their coronavirus response. Ano pong mangyayari? Will the national government supplement additional funds to these LGUs?
The support will be, much of the support will be sa ngayon ay in kind. So the Quick Response Fund is not transferable, but contrary to what you are saying, based on record ay marami pang LGUs meron pa. Mataas pa nga yung iba. Yung iba naman ay konti na lang. So meron pang pondo ang mga local government units kasi empowered naman sila to realign their funds, and with Bayanihan 1, they were given additional funds to address the COVID-19 pandemic. So nakikita natin in the database of DILG na meron pang funds. So that's why we are asking them, the LGUs, to make full use of their funds. Anyway, we are approaching the end of the year, and those funds, if not used, except for the QRF, will be expiring. So use it now.
Mm-hmm. And then, sir, kumusta naman po yung supply ng mga relief goods? Do we have enough supply of prepositioned relief goods in the areas affected by Typhoon Rolly?
So meron pa sa mga regions, sa mga regional field offices ng DSWD, meron pang mga prepositioned goods, and DSWD is looking at augmenting their supplies. So meron supplies from their central warehouses in Pasay City and Cebu City, and with supplies also of the local government units, we anticipate na kakailanganin yung augmentation natin magagawa 1 week after the landfall pa. So the supplies prepositioned in the regions as well as the supplies of the local government units may still be enough for a period of 1 week before the DSWD needs to send the augmentation. But we'll be doing that immediately once the weather clears. We don't wait for the 1 week.
Of course. And then with our experience with the Super Typhoon Yolanda, communication lines have been disrupted. There were no electric connection. Are we ready for this in case na mangyari po ulit ito? Meron po bang mga satellite phones na yung mga national agencies at the local government units?
We are coming up a backup system. Meron tayong when incidents like this happens, we organize what we call now the government emergency telecom team. So we are going to make use of backup communication systems or the organic communication systems of the different national government agencies and local government units, and mostly radio ito, no? So for reporting, just in case we will not have data and voice from the telcos, we'll be using the radio communication systems of the different government agencies as well as partner organizations, you know? And we are also in contact with Globe and Telco for the immediate repair of downed cell sites, as well as deployment of cell site on wheels in areas na priority na kinakailangan na may deployment ng ganun. So, and we also have some equipment from the DICT, the Government Emergency Communication Systems, which is used only for management or disaster management operations. So, in ground zeros, so to speak, we can have communication system that can be deployed in those areas.
Okay, so yung mga
that is voice and data through satellite.
All right, and all these equipment are now on standby in the community.
Yes, we also have satellite phones. Some LGUs have their own. Our regional offices have satellite phones as well as high frequency radios.
Mm-hmm. Sir, nung Super Typhoon Yolanda, naging malaking issue ang pamumuno sa pagtugon sa crisis. Sino po yung nasa command ngayon?
Well, even during the time of Yolanda, in effect naman na yung coordination during emergencies as prescribed by Republic Act 10121. And always it is the local chief executive who is in command in his own locality. And he is just to be augmented by the national government agencies. Ang problema lang doon sa Yolanda is, of course, yung mga responders doon, yung mga local chief executives ay victims din. It took them a long time to be able to resume their function as government officials and government employees. But for this, we don't expect to see such kind of situation. Our local chief executives, I think, will still be there, and meron namang succession of command dyan sa mga local government units. If the mayor is not around, then they can go to the vice mayor, then to the number one councilor, and so on and so forth. If nobody is around among the elected local officials in the mayor, then anyone of the commanders of uniformed services can temporarily head the management of the situation until such time that one of the elected officials will surface and assume the function of managing the situation in that particular locality. So meron tayong protocol as prescribed by Republic Act 10121.
Mm-hmm. And sir, have you recently met with the president?
We are in contact with his office, and he is updated through reporting and the guidance relayed to us. I'm not directly in contact with the president. The guidance is relayed to us is to carry out the highest level of preparedness in connection with Typhoon Rolly.
Okay, but do you have any upcoming meetings or briefings with him?
It might be tomorrow through virtual meeting together with some cabinet secretaries who will be physically present in the operation center.
Mm-hmm.
But with the president possibly participating through online means or Zoom.
So he'll be there to discuss matters with you and not just represented by someone.
That was the information relayed to us, so it's possible. Yeah.
I see. Okay, but in the past week, sir, did you have like any meeting online or in person with the president related to these series of typhoons na mananalasa sa bansa?
Well, the president is in contact with all the cabinet secretaries for all the concerns in governance, but the priority concern now is addressing the current pandemic. And in those meetings, our cabinet secretaries report matters to the president on other concerns. So he is in command. It's that I'm not one of those who are privy to those meetings.
Yusek, meron din tayo mga tanong mula sa mga community reporter ng Fight. Una mula kay Christian Rivera. Do you think that Filipinos are now well-informed and resilient enough in terms of surviving natural disasters or surviving disasters like this? For instance, are the people in affected areas aware of what storm surges and other hazards are?
We are advancing in our level of disaster preparedness. And I think that can be shown in our improvement in the ranking in the World Risk Index. From number 3, we are now number 9. It's because of the improvement in capacities na build ng ating gobyerno. And as well as doon sa communities. But still, mataas pa rin ang overall disaster risk natin. And we are really trying to improve on our risk communication so that people will be able to understand the risk and with that come up with actions to lower their risk, lower their vulnerabilities and increase their capacity. So merong improvement tayo, but still we still have much work to be done. Yesterday, we had a full council meeting in the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, and we were able to approve the proposed National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Plan for 2020 to 2030. This is an updated version of the current plan. So, and the implementation of that plan will definitely improve our ranking in the World Risk Index. So, again, increase our disaster resilience.
So there's a new plan, sir.
Yeah.
And did that include the pandemic as a factor now influencing disaster management?
Yeah, that's the reason we were supposed to have that approved early this year, but because of the pandemic, we were given the opportunity to again review the plan and make it align or make our responses in with the pandemic align with that National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Plan.
Pero ano, sir, yung mga improvement sa bagong plan?
One is that we realize we have to improve on financing. We have to improve on monitoring and evaluation of our accomplishment of the plan. So marami, and we reviewed the outcomes and outputs and made some improvements. And in that meeting yesterday, there was ownership of by all the agencies composing the NDRRMC, and the different outcomes and outputs were presented by the respective lead agencies in the 4 thematic areas of the disaster risk reduction and management, on prevention and mitigation by DOST, on preparedness by DILG, on response by DSWD, and on rehabilitation recovery by NEDA. So they were the ones who presented the revised outcomes and outputs to the council. So, but that just opens us to more actions, more to be done by the different agencies, so that the plan will be, the vision in the plan will be attained.
Mm-hmm. And then another question from Fight community reporter Mark Dominic Rivera. But I believe this was asked already earlier. He's also asking about the Calamity Funds. Pero sir, just to add another question from this, I understand that you mentioned earlier na hindi naman problema talaga yung Calamity Fund? Because you mentioned na marami pa rin mga LGUs yung may sapat na pondo. Pero do we have the exact figures as to how many LGUs are not having problems with the funds and those na mayroong problema?
I don't have the figures. I was not able to bring with me the data on calamity funds of the local government units. But what I saw there are, well, there are some LGUs with small amounts remaining, about 20% remaining in their local DRR plan. But there are some LGUs with still about 80% of their budget remaining. And majority of the LGUs have around 40–50% remaining in their budget. So what does that mean? Funds is not a problem. It seems the utilization is a problem.
From Facebook user Ed Angelo Silvano 5, in a scale of 1 to 10, how would you assess the readiness of the government in responding to Typhoon Rolly?
I wish I can do that. I can again reiterate that we have some improvements in the World Risk Index ranking. And for typhoons, because we are being visited by typhoons about 20 in a year, the ILG has developed a protocol for the local chief executives. So responding to, preparing to, for, and responding to the effects of the typhoons is, I think, easier than other disasters, like, for example, earthquake. You know. But we are trying to improve. That's with the plans being developed and the plans mandated to be developed from the regional level down to the local government level. So medyo, pagdating sa typhoon, medyo sanay na tayo. But then, ang problema kasi is, meron talaga tayong weakest link dyan, and that is yung ating mga kababayan living in high-risk areas. In fact, in Metro Manila, we had a discussion on those areas living in high-risk areas. Although in Metro Manila, we have high capacity, relatively high capacity among the cities, but then also we also have high vulnerabilities sector, and those are the weakest link. If you see some cities in the coastal areas of Manila, of Metro Manila, you can see some informal settlers. And with the typhoon traversing Metro Manila, there's that risk of storm surge and heavy rains. And on tomorrow evening, when the typhoon is expected to be over Metro Manila, is also a high tide, and with a combination of heavy rains and strong winds, that pose a big problem for us. So that's why we are advocating really preemptive evacuation, early evacuation.
All right. And then from Fight community reporter Gio Costuna, what lessons we learned from Yolanda can be applied in responding to Typhoon Rolly?
There are so many lessons that we learned from our experience in Yolanda, and that's why the National Disaster Response Plan was developed. And one of that, in the National Disaster Response Plan, we have clusterized our responses. And one of the cluster is the government emergency telecom teams, because we experienced in Yolanda the total cut-off of communications. We need the backup, the backups. And prepositioning of goods, the training of the local government units in disaster management is one thing. That's why we have a training program in OCD to capacitate the local government units. And orchestrating the international assistance is one thing. We now have institutionalized the Philippine International Humanitarian Assistance cluster. And you can see in our website in OCD, for example, if you browse, that we have a platform there on donations. So back in Yolanda, there were so many donations, but then we did not have a record of the donations. Who gave the donations, where it went, how much, what are those donations. So medyo magulo yung processing the donations. In fact, the OCD is a recipient of donations in terms of disaster response equipment from the Armed Forces of Korea, so which they left behind when they returned to Korea. And we were not able to generate records of the entry of those equipment. And that's why we are having a hard time registering those equipment, those vehicles with the Land Transportation Office.
Sorry, sir, your line was a bit breaking up. But ano po yung mga equipment na yun, sir? Galing sa
yeah, we have water tanker, we have a mobile kitchen, we have operational support items. So, and wala tayong record nun, what we just saw the equipment. So, but this time we have institutionalized the Philippine International Humanitarian Assistance cluster system. So, and we have improved on other areas of disaster management, really.
Okay.
And you can see that in our National Disaster Response Plan.
All right. And then, sir, you mentioned about the help from the international community. Ano po yung proseso sa pagtanggap ng tulong mula sa international community?
We can accept international assistance once there is already that expressed approval by the President. If you can remember, during the Typhoon Yolanda, there was a pronouncement by President Aquino that we are accepting international assistance. Kasi si Presidente lang naman ang magpagalaw. Otherwise, the processing of international assistance will go through a process starting with DFA, then to the office, then to our office, if that is for disaster response, then to the office of the Executive Secretary, through other government agencies, like, for example, Department of Finance, because these items will require payment of taxes. But with the express approval of the President, all those processing will be shortened with the establishment of a one-stop shop. Nandyan yan sa ating Philippine International Humanitarian Assistance.
I see. And then so far, meron na po bang mga nag-reach out sa inyo para sa possible na tulong?
Yes, the UN Office of Coordination for Humanitarian Assistance, I received a call from their country representatives, and Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez expressed the assurance of the UN OSA for assistance for coordinating international assistance for the Philippines in the event we'll be requesting or deciding to accept international assistance.
I see. So they're going to provide help.
But that we have to process, we have to get the approval of the President.
Okay. So that will definitely be part of the agenda in your upcoming meeting with the President.
Well, it depends on the impact. If the impact is manageable based on our resources, then there will be no need for asking for international assistance.
And sir, ano na lang po yung gusto nyong sabihin sa mga residenteng nakatira, lalo na sa mga hazard prone areas sa mga probinsyang maapektuhan ng bagyong Rolly? Sige po.
Okay, so sa ating mga kababayan, aking inuulit ko ang aming panawagan na mag-ingat dito kay Typhoon Rolly. Ito ay malakas na bagyo. Sa ngayon ay ito ay nasa lakas na 215 kilometers per hour at ito ay nasa malayo pa. Sana ay ito ay humina. Pero inulit ko ang aking ang aming pananawagan na sumunod sa mga abiso ng ating mga local government units, yung mga nakatira sa mga lugar na mapanganib, high-risk areas, at yung mga kababayan natin na nakatira sa medyo maihinang istruktura, yun ay delikado sa panalalasa ng isang typhoon na magdadala ng hangin na 215 kilometers per hour. So, at ang ating namang mga national government agencies ay committed na tumulong sa ating mga local government units. So lahat na yan, PSWD, DOH, OCD, DepEd, even TPWH. So lahat, all hands on deck, bali tayo dito sa National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. Lahat ng ahensya ng gobyerno ay nagtutulong-tulong para i-address ang panganib na dala nitong si Typhoon Rolly at ang epekto. So sana maiwasan ang mga casualties so that tayo ay magkatulong-tulungan naman para sa buo ng mga programa, pag-implement ng mga programa para sa rehabilitation recovery ng mga areas na dinaanan na destroy. Definitely may mga pagsisira na gagawin nito sa agrikultura, sa mga infrastructures, mga kabahayan. At yan ay tutugunan naman ng gobyerno para ayusin at para tayo ay magkaroon ng recovery at sa rehabilitation.
Maraming salamat, Yusek Jalad.
Maraming salamat, Makoi. Maraming salamat, Rolls, at saka kay Errol and Abby.
Okay. Sa mga susunod na araw, patuloy po kami magbibigay ng mga regular na update tungkol sa Typhoon Rolly. I-follow po ninyo ang mga social media page ng Fight Media sa Twitter, Facebook at Instagram. Ako po si Makoi Popioco. Maraming salamat.